Oh, you're really not supposed to go here. Well, greetings friends and welcome back. Today we are looking at my personal favourite fighter ship, the Gutamaya Fighter. Now I have addressed this before on this channel and I don't get particularly motion sick, but if ever I was going to, it would be in this thing. This thing is absolute vomit rocket when it starts spinning or you hit something and you're flailing around in space like a ninny. Hello Commander Headless, sitting there being all headless as per normal. Interestingly enough, there's a bit of this carbon fiber that's glitching through the back of Commander Headless's chair there. You can see the chair is directly behind it, which is a bit weird. Ooh, before I forget, let's have a look at this heatsink and have a look at the size of it, because I have promised that for a couple of videos. It is 1 meter by 1 meter, and the heatsink itself, I'd say, is about that long, by about the same width, actually, about that wide, and each of those circles there is about the size of a small side plate. Now the interior of this feels very much like a closed-in cockpit, and much more kind of like a fighter jet, although much wider than one, about the right length in terms of the canopy. The grab handles up here, if we were seated in the sitting position, are here and here. Again, not necessarily, because you are not actually in here. Over here we have some speakers, what very much looks like tweeter kind of speakers that you would find in your 1976 Tirana. Over here we have some more speakers, and they do not have an interior either. There's another one of these strange indicators like we saw at in the actual cutter itself with the tick box, but it's flipped. There's some signage up here that says discharge 87E coolant circulation, and oh god, that's so small, lock out power before removing hatch. Probably good advice. And these switches over here, well, they're supposed to be switches, but they're the same pump switches that we saw inside the cutter, except each one is probably the thickness of about 3 matchsticks, so there's no real way to press those. There's a up and down, maybe volume up and down. I don't know what they're supposed to be, but some level of small switches there. Over here we have a little panel that doesn't appear to open in any way, shape or form. A micro miniature version of the glowing blue circles that we've seen in the Imperial ships before. There's another one. Oh, talk about small buttons. This entire panel with that up, down, left, right and up and down that says Gutamaya Systems, the whole thing is probably 2 thumb widths. So there is absolutely no way that you could press any of those buttons. There appears to be something written there that is absolutely microscopic. I've got my eye right next to it, so let me know if you can read that, because I certainly can't. Then there's some more greebling and stuff along this panelway. What looks like that should be areas for screws or pop rivets, but there actually aren't any there. And coming down to the front. So in order to give you a sense of size, I'm going to try not to reset here. If we start here in the sitting position, you would be like this. The side panels come down here, and the tweeter speakers are there, so that's sort of the side panels, and then the top panels come up here towards the front with the main speakers here sort of behind you. The sides of the canopy then come down like this over the top of this dash, which we'll have a look at in a second, and down here towards the front. Conversely, these arms come back this way and then join the grab handles there before coming up and over your head here, and the sides of the cockpit coming down like this and towards the front again. So the dash itself has got the same normal things that you would see. A panel here that's for the engine systems and weapons, about the size of a Galaxy Tab A or a large iPhone, ultra large iPhone maybe. A small dish plate or a small soup bowl perhaps for the projection here. A thing over here that says Gutamaya. Is it etched in gold? Not really, it's just printed. Some more little indicators or tweeter speakers here. I don't know what they are, but if there are so many speakers in these ships, it's a bit of a wonder. This thing over here, which looks kind of like a cute alien, but is meant to probably be a display of some description. Interestingly, this 212 meters pointing down to where the cutter is floating directly above that. So I'm not sure if that's meant to be an emitter for that. Potentially, but obviously once it reaches the actual window, it pops out over onto the cutter itself. Over here, if I can shine some sun on it, we have the rest of the panels, another one of those speakery kind of things, and maybe some displays which aren't actually displaying anything. On the far side of the panel, we have some shiny carbon fiber, some weird sort of shapes that indicate there could be something that could go in there, but there isn't. Maybe a spot for your mobile phone, if we still have these in 1,000 odd years, 1,300 years, whatever. And over here, oh, there we go. See, it looks like there's supposed to be a support strut or something coming down out of there, but there isn't one on that side. And then on the other side, we just have a repeat, and we can see there Gutamaya written on the outside of the ship as well, looking over there towards the winglet with those cool raked back fins. And the other side, for all intents and purposes, is just reversed and backwards with all the same signage, all the same tiny things. This panel reversed, so the tick is the right way around, and everything else simply flipped. Obviously, I haven't been in the Batwing ever, but very much the interior of this, apart from it being quite white, feels like a Batmobile or Batwing kind of situation. So if you're after that kind of experience, this is where you would get it. Down here by the pilot's shin, we have a sign that says server access, disengage autopilot before removing panel. And we just have the interior where the feet go. I don't know if you can really see that. It sort of does come up and over, with the foot plates being here, and again it's glitching into the actual wall of the fighter itself. So a few janky glitchy things over here, including the chair itself that goes down straight through the floor and halfway into the ship. But we know from these HR Geiger seats that they are quite tall, and hence why it goes through the floor and into almost above where the heatsink actually lives. So if we pick one of these wings and start to walk out onto it as far as we can see it's made out of a combination of glossy sort of material, which is meant to be this little inlay, and possibly some carbon fiber or some such on the outsides. Now, probably not going to make it all the way out to the edges themselves, but the entire winglet on the end there is probably 1.5 to 2 meters in length, probably 2 meters if you count the little antenna out the front. And each one of those fins on the rear would probably be the equivalent of some anime leg armor for a character, which would start at the hip and reach pretty much to the foot if they were about 6 foot tall. So that gives you an idea of how long and large those fins actually are. Now, unfortunately, in the first-person view, as we know from previous videos, there are actually two versions of the ship, the first-person interior view and the exterior view. And in the exterior view, you're not supposed to get to these places where I currently am, hence why you can see directly through the wing, but it gives you a little view, a little sneak peek of what the commander's cockpit area looks like from the wing itself, which is kind of cool. Obviously, it doesn't render the jets there for the engine, but it gives you an idea of how close the commander's teleprojection is to the rear of the ship. So you can see that this fighter is so short and so small that the commander pretty much fills up the entire thing, barring these large engines which sit on either side of the commander's chair itself. Now, as we approach the rear of the ship from the exterior view, you get a bit of a better sense of what that sort of looks like and where those engines should be popping out. You can see there that it says stay clear through to where the commander is sitting through the other side or teleprojected into. You can also see there that the utility point there is not actually really attached, which is a bit weird. There's a little view of the sprites of the engines as we fire those up, coming out of there, and I don't know if you can see that in VR, but the little glitchy, reflection-y kind of thing, whatever it's trying to do as it flies about. You can also see that the fins on the end there are actually steering as they're coming up and down and steering the fighter. Now that heat haze is intense. Let's try a boost. It's pretty much, you're not able to see really anything because of that heat haze. It just ruins everything. Speaking of ruining everything, here's another ruining thing. Yes, unfortunately, the things coming out of the sun are sprites. I mean, the lens, the sun flare is not, but those clouds are sprites. You can see it follows my head as I turn my head around. And here, looking straight down into the commander's area as they're sitting there, you can see even the chair is super low textured. The control stick and throttle are not really textured in any way, shape or form. You can see that they're just plain white. Everything else that we have seen completely loses its texture. So, and we know this from previous videos where we have seen the exterior versus interior view of something. Interestingly though, the Commander themselves is still high res. It's just everything else around them that becomes extremely low res. And yeah, I hadn't actually noticed that those control surfaces become completely white, but you can see, oh, you're really not supposed to go here. You can see that they are completely white and low polygon, and obviously there's no resolution there because they're just white. Oh, that is really trippy. Okay, I suppose the one interesting thing about this fighter in particular is that the weapons themselves are these pointy, lasery kind of things coming out the front, and if we give it a bit of a rip, you can see the lasers definitely come out of the tips of those. Now inside there seems to be blue flashing, I don't know what they are, capacitors or generators or transistors or I don't know, electronics, but there seems to just be that single thing with a twist coil around it going all the way through to the front where the laser would now come out of my eye socket. There we are. There's something you didn't need to see because you didn't care. And coming around the front, you can see the ship lights themselves coming on and off out of this little slot at the front there. And again, you can see that it's entirely see-through from this view because, again, you're not supposed to actually be here. Whereas if you look at it from the actual exterior camera, you can see that the lights are rendered and quite cool looking. If we just roll it over and have a look at the underneath, you have what appears to be a escape hatch or a hatch to enter and exit the fighter, which would be totally inaccessible because it's right under the front of where the commander's feet are. Perhaps it's an area for maintenance of the front part of the ship, because certainly you wouldn't be able to get in there because that is where the whole center console section lives. And around the front here we have this cool little two-sectioned panel system, some low polygon greebling, and around the side we have more of the same coming out to the side parts of the ship there. Well friends, that's about it for your look at the Gutamaya Fighter. Thank you for joining me as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Fly safe, Commanders.